I want to apologize for the audio quality of the first part of the episode. I didn't realize that Audacity, the program that I use to record, that the microphone was not turned on in the program. So I like some of the stuff that's in there, so I'm not going to cut it out because I do like some of the things I had to say, but I'm just going to ask for an apology on the front end for the audio quality, that it won't happen again. I hope. I can never promise anything, but I want to apologize in advance for the audio quality for the first part of the episode, and just bear with me. These things happen.
Warning. This episode of Music City Murder contains depictions of extreme violence. Listener discretion is advised. Also, this is a Patreon preview. If you'd like to hear the whole thing, head over to patreon.com/Music City Murder and select either the $1 or $3 tier. Thanks, and enjoy the episode.
Hello, and welcome to Music City Murder, a podcast about the crimes and history of Nashville, Tennessee. I'm your host, T. Blake Brady, but you, friends, can call me Tyler. Thank you so much for joining me. Right off the top, I assume you're asking yourselves why I chose an Australian voiceover artist to introduce the podcast. Now, there is an awkward kind of relationship to this episode, but it's entirely incidental. And the truth is, I just thought it would be fun. I just thought it'd be a fun way to introduce the podcast, something a little different from my own voice. And I just thought it'd be kind of neat. And it is neat. So I'll have to put the credit to the voiceover artist I hired on Fiverr. I'll put that in the details for the podcast in case you would like some own voice work of your own. Music City Murder is meant to give people an insight not just into the most famous murders in and around Nashville, but also the city's history as well as what makes it tick. This episode is exempt from that. This is going to be an episode just for Patreon subscribers. So if you haven't already, head over to patreon.com/Music City Murder, and you can join up for just $1 per month. And you get not just a new episode per month, but access to all the previous episodes and Patreon-only episodes. So that is, I think, worth the price of admission. There's also a $3 tier if you're just feeling generous and you just love the podcast and love me and want to see it all succeed. So just know it helps sort of offset the cost of, paying for all the things that I do for the podcast. So it's an incredible amount of work to research for a podcast if you want to do it well. So any help there would be much appreciated. And I'd love it if you just at least know you're listening. You can go over to the Apple iTunes app on your phone, the purple podcast app, and just rate and review the podcast. Give it 5 stars. And it doesn't matter what you say. Just say, I like it. Or you could say, yeah. You could say, yeah, Y-E-A. It doesn't even have to, whatever you put doesn't matter. It's not about my feelings or my ego. It's about the algorithm, because the more ratings that the podcast has, then the higher it goes on the charts. So there's a billion podcasts out there, and I want to separate Music City Murder from the rest of them. Now, let's get on to the show. My sources for this episode include a series of articles and also a book that I read a little bit of called What Happened to Olivia and Ben. And this episode is as different from anything we've ever done as humanly possible, figuratively and geographically, as we're going to see. Because it has to do with New Year's. And on that note, we survived 2020. It seemed like equal parts miracle and miracle that got us through this year, but we made it through nonetheless. That is not to say that everybody made it through. I'm sure that everyone has suffered some amount of loss through 2020, especially here in the United States. So not to downplay, but if you're here with us, we should celebrate that and be happy that we are here. So there's no magic to the new year. I mean, it's it's a figurative rebirth. It's not a literal rebirth. I think a lot of people get too literal when they say like, well, it's nothing makes it change on January the 1st. It's still, everything's still the same, which is true, but the New Year's allows us a time to rejuvenate. It allows us a time to renew our sort of, not vows, that's the word that comes to mind, but it allows us to renew our promises to ourselves and to try to recommit to things that matter to us. Because I don't know about you, but the winter is a tough time for me. I mean, things just get really, really difficult emotionally, and it's dark and it's cold. Then there's Christmas, and then suddenly you're kind of thrust back into the world of work and all of that, and you're not in this cozy Christmas time of being with family and enjoying gifts and to cuddling up with my son and my wife and just having a nice family time. It's tough. So I think that New Year's is a nice time to recommit. And so that's what it means to me. That said, this is not a story of hope and renewal. In fact, it's one of the stranger murder cases I've read about recently, and it coincides with New Year's. That's why I chose it. I know we're almost done with January, but this episode relates to New Year and sort of the potential ruin of what happens when you think that fate is going to deal you a new hand, but deals you an entirely different one. Now, for this episode, we're going to head all the way down to New Zealand. That's not why I chose I do know that there's a difference between Australia and New Zealand. So I didn't choose an Australian voiceover artist for this episode because I'm ignorant of the difference between New Zealand and Australia. It was purely happenstance. I knew that we were doing a Patreon episode, and I thought, hey, it would be neat to do a new intro. And then I saw voiceover artists. I saw someone from Australia, and I said that would be super cool. And that was before I started researching this episode. So there's that. But yeah, we're heading to New Zealand, which, like I said, is geographically as different from Nashville as possible. Yeah, this is Australia and New Zealand are different. Let me make that proclamation. I don't want to start a feud with all you Kiwis out there, okay? So we're going to go not just all the way to New Zealand, but all the way back to 1997/1998. In December 1997, friends Ben Smart, 21, and Olivia Hope, 17, celebrated New Year's Eve at Furneaux Lodge in the Marlborough Sounds with 1,500 other partygoers. This is one of those sort of boat party situations where people get on their boats and go to a single location, and then they can party on boats. They can take a water taxi into the regular area, go on land. There's a lodge there. People drink and party, and that's it's one of those. I'm sure even if you've never been to one, you can imagine one. Sounds like a great time, right? There would be eventually over 200 boats tied up at this location for New Year's Eve activities. Marlborough is located at the top of New Zealand's South Island. Furneaux Lodge was well known for New Year's celebrations. It's a venue that was originally built as a holiday home for a migrant Scottish family. Okay, and Furneaux Lodge had been transformed into a resort with a restaurant, shop, garden bar, chalets, and also backpacker accommodations. It's a really nice place. I've seen pictures of it, saw a little video of it, and it's just a really neat location. Just a place, it looks like a giant cabin where, a great horror movie could take place, but that's beside the point. Olivia Hope had traveled to the lodge with a group of friends, and her older sister, Amelia, should be noted, on a chartered yacht called the Tamarack. I'm going to stop there too. They call it Tamarack, but I find that really difficult not to put it.
This is a Patreon preview. If you'd like to hear the whole thing, head over to patreon.com/Music City Murder and select either the $1 or $3 tier.